Hi everyone, thank you. So what a journey it's been, and it's a lot of the time it feels like it hasn't even started for us, even though we've had a relationship with Degree for several years. And not to be cynical, but honestly, I do think that the hard work still actually has to come forward. And many of my colleagues are here today and probably watching online. But look, what I wanted to talk to you today about was essentially where we've come from, what we had to do, and a bit of what we've done so far. So with KPMG, the relationship with Degreed's been for a few years now, and what we've actually done is looked at the LXP, and a lot of individual countries said, yep, this is a great product, we'll take it on board. And I did the same thing in Australia, so obviously coming from Sydney, Australia, we implemented Degreed as the LXP for our gateway, and word got out, essentially. So through advocacy, other countries wanted to actually take this on board, and so they did. And so what we ended up with is 12 individual instances of Degreed. And that was okay for the country, but what you then have is a global learning development team sitting there thinking, how are we going to seamlessly deploy learning, or how are we going to actually collect consistent data? How are we going to even deploy consistent learning across our network? And therein lies what we had to do 12 months ago, is really stop, take note, re-strategize, have a look at what we needed to do. And it was pretty evident that we needed a gateway, a global gateway for our technology ecosystem. And a number of benefits there, of course, for us in global learning development. We've got consistency, we're able to deploy seamlessly for actually quite a vast network. And the next slide is not necessarily to show you how big we are. I mean, there's 200,000 employees we're dealing with here. But it's important to understand that unlike other organizations I've worked for, when global learning and development make a decision, it pretty much comes from the top down and everybody adopts it. We're a little bit different. We're unique. So what you see in front of you is literally our roadmap. And I want you to take this in consideration of what we had to do. So with these countries, they literally act as a separate organization. So if you can imagine, we are dealing with separate businesses who've got separate sales targets, revenue, et cetera, et cetera. So, and they have decision making which is completely different. So to implement a global Degreed instance, it's not as simple as it sounded. And we had that challenge 12 months ago. So therein lies what we had to do. We had to change tact a little bit. We had to think about a couple of things, and that's what I'll share with you today, what we had to do. But imagine going to each of these companies and positioning an LXP. There's two things we did not do. We realized this was not working. The first one, we don't talk about technology. Technology, everyone was basically technology fatigued. And the second was, we actually don't talk about learning. And you're all going to say, oh, what do you mean? It's actually a learner experience platform. The sooner we actually got rid of the language of learning, the better it actually became for us to get country engagement. So before we sort of go into the next phase and slide and so on of what we actually had to do, the actual amounts, and credit to the team because we've got a short team, a small team here in a short amount of time to achieve a global instance of Degreed. And our aim was not to launch every single one of them. We don't have that jurisdiction, but our aim was to make them capable, enable them, to make them launch ready at their own time, their own pace. We're dealing with many cultures, we're dealing with many countries, and we literally can't tell them, launch this time, launch next week, launch next month. So there was a lot of obviously sort of influencing that actually had to occur, and we're working towards a very short time frame too. This is part of a 3-year plan to really encompass a learning technology ecosystem and using the LXP as the single gateway to learning. Sounds simple. It's not. So just to credit the next slide to the amount of effort and work that has gone into in those 12 months. It is astronomical. I implemented the Australian instance of Degreed and I had a small team, and that was tough. And we didn't have any IT experts involved too. The global team, we joined forces and we were able to achieve what you see in front of you. Our first wave consisted of 32 countries. Now imagine one implementation of Degreed multiplied by 32. That was quite an interesting experience. We made it, it was great. It doesn't necessarily mean, and nor do we guarantee that everybody's launched, but we had to get them ready. Again, I'll repeat, everyone's got a different culture, different priorities, different objectives, and we can't basically tell them what to do. We act as a guidance, but also making them absolutely ready through making them launch ready. So the second wave actually started in September, late last year, and again, 27 countries came on board. Now remember, there's probably about 140 countries all up, so I can't stand here today and say, hey, we've got a 100% success rate. That's going to almost be impossible, but we'll get there. That'll be our aim. And then we've actually started wave 3. So when you take a look at the amount of degree implementations, it's actually astronomical. And the amount of effort that's going on, and it's continuous. And we've got this year to go. Now with that, you're literally looking at 91 degreed implementations, because what we've done is we have actually followed a degreed implementation toolkit. We haven't changed any of that. We literally do the showcases. We actually sort of realize that Degreed know what they're doing. They've implemented things in the past. Why would we change a formula that actually works? So that is rule number 1. Don't go changing something that is actually not broken. So with that, we're finding that we were actually trying to do all the workshops and enable all our partners and all our learning and development teams. And if you can imagine all those little businesses, those 32, 27, 32 again, countries, they've got learning and development teams within it. So it's educating, training, making them aware, all the separate IT departments, all coming on board. We took a bit of the heavy lifting, so there was about 17 plus learner management systems integrations. Again, that was important because all our compliance and mandatory learning comes through. But I think and then the obviously paid content providers out there, we've also integrated there. Doing all of that per wave, imagine that. Good news is that we're not doing so bad so far. And it is working. We've got a few countries that are actually about 30 odd plus countries that have launched, and they see the benefit of not only having a single gateway, but also providing an opportunity for a broader learning experience that really is not so embedded in mandatory learning. So that's basically a bit of the achievements that we've done so far. But how did we get there? Because you cannot talk to those decision makers about learning. And I'm sorry, I'm a learning and development geek. I love it. I'm a learning and development professional. I've been doing it for 25 years. One of the things I had to do, I had to separate my passion and the love for LXP and actually talk business speak. And that's pretty hard because especially when you believe in something, you actually have to disassociate yourself and say, okay, how am I going to position this? How are we going to get buy-in from people who've got their own budgets, have got their own different ways of interpreting learning, and the only thing that's really important to them is mandatory learning? That's a difficult task. So the first thing we had to do, what we did, is look at the external landscape. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but it's just looking at some research out there, just to inform us, to give us a bit of for me, it was a conversation starter. Because I didn't know, and I am going to these countries and these stakeholders one by one, essentially, just a conversation starter and saying, does this resonate? Look what's happening in the external marketplace. Our future leaders don't learn the way I learn, that's for sure. What's happening with skills? We even got Janice from Degree to talk to us, to talk to our CLO briefing, to talk about how skills are so important and the emerging skills and the transfer and how it's now become almost a commodity. Just really raising awareness of different thinking and mindsets as a starting point. The other thing I did from my presentation packs, I've included some of this information here, but I dropped the word learning, right? It was almost like a dirty word. People, you've got to think we've just implemented a global learning technology ecosystem. They have a global learning management system. And if you are dealing with people, not influencers, but decision makers, they are not necessarily, they don't know the difference between a learner experience platform versus an LMS. So as soon as I dropped the word learning and started thinking, okay, what's going to make them tick? What's going to make them really buy in to potentially this great tool that we've got? So I had to start to think differently. Pause, listen. And also we're dealing with many cultures, so what worked for one country in one region was not working for another country. So again, if you come in there thinking technology, learning, you may not necessarily get the buy-in. So one of the things that I had to do is talk about skills. I really did focus on skills. And the change management deck removed it from learner experience platform. I took the word learning and just placed a simple title, skilling and reskilling. And that had power because who doesn't want to know about skilling their workforce? We've got several functions at KPMG. We've got accounting, advisory, tax and legal. And some of those industries are going through quite a significant amount of transformation. And the business leaders, they absolutely want to know what can they do to skill their people. So many different ways and impacts there from a retention perspective and employee value proposition. So the second we started thinking away from learning, and it's not to negate all the wonderful benefits that the learning experience platform has, but soon you start thinking as a business leader to, especially for those ones who are actually making those decisions, the easier the conversation and the flow was. So to get commitment, I really had to sort of not be a learning and development professional for a few hours or so. So what did I do? So we looked at the different types of drivers that these business leaders had, or what was their problem. And that obviously sort of was to do with a lot of listening, to understanding culturally how it impacts, because you cannot go through a cookie cutter approach to every single country and say, hey, here's an LXP, take it because we need it. That doesn't work. So what did we do? It was quite interesting, the different drivers and diverse drivers. I was quite surprised at how some things would resonate for some regions, others would not. And it all comes down to, yes, I show them the external, what's happening in the external landscape, but that was a point of discussion to open up. And then they would provide feedback to say, hey, we're not really interested in this, or we are interested in that. And by that, I was able to really tailor what was resonating for them. For some, it was skilling and reskilling. Great, too easy. We've got skills data, you can actually map. Imagine having skills insights on your workforce. You can help with investment decisions on learning and development for the next 12 months. Or you can see where your workforce is skilled and where it's not. Really easy conversation, the product does itself, justice, and that's not a hard piece to sell. For other countries, it was concern around the future generation, the future leaders. The way that we learn, as we know, it's constantly changing. And the next generation learns completely different. So what could we think about providing them a tool that they're able to tailor, that's actually based on what their interests are, as opposed to just traditional, I'm going to push learning onto you. So, and really think about positioning the whole concept of pool learning. We're going to provide you an opportunity, a platform that you can learn anytime, anywhere, and on anything. Again, that's what some of the graduates were actually asking for and wanted to change. So another benefit there that I did not take a cookie cutter approach, and basically sort of tailored it after listening to what each business leader was saying. Return on investment, this one surprised me because I wasn't expecting this one, given the fact I do love return on investment, especially determining the value of learning. And for this one though, it was a region that was, okay, great, we're going to spend X amount, what are we going to get into return? So, and this is when I obviously contacted Degreed and my customer relationship manager there and said, hey, can you give me a report of some sorts? There's a Forrester report, if you haven't seen it yet, on the ROI of Degreed. And that did the trick, taking the concepts there of how organizations, learning departments can increase efficiency through using curation as a tool, and just in terms of onboarding as well. And those are some key aspects that resonated with this particular region. I went, fantastic, that's great. So again, that's an easy fix. Global content, this has always probably been one of the challenges when you've got a network so sparse, is how do we drive consistency to some of the great material that our team actually develops? In the past, it was really difficult because not everybody was on the same single platform or ecosystem. With Degreed, again, easy sell was, we're going to be developing pathways plans. We've already got 100 plus of them ready to go, from human skills through to technical. Why wouldn't you come in? And again, a very easy sell. That content needed to be developed first before you can go in and have those conversations. But that was a selling point to some business leaders. Because if you took a look at some of those countries, we have countries that are, again, quite large. We've got massive learning development teams. And then we've got other regions that have only got one person that is catering for all learning and development needs. And that's pretty tough if you're expecting that particular person to redevelop learning consistently. It's impossible. So they were able to leverage global content, ready-made content, and not even to mention the amount of content that's already in Degreed as well with the providers and so on. So a great benefit there. Collaboration. Again, some regions, and not for every region, when you have smaller countries, again, that size really does impact them. And so the ability for L&D teams to check out what everybody else is doing in their region was a massive selling point. So with the specific roles in Degreed, you can just say, hey, look, only these people who are learning and development administrators, they want to have access to what's going on, especially when it's related to a specific language and content may not necessarily be there. They were able to collaborate. Again, a massive selling point for a particular region, and a little bit later, you'll probably see which region that is. That was quite key. So not giving access to everybody across the region, although you can do that, this was specific. The L&D teams wanted to collaborate more. They wanted to see what is being developed, what is being developed, and can they actually leverage off each other. Fantastic benefit. I talked about skilling and reskilling. Skills inventory, and I would say from a maturity model, we're probably not there yet. So today and last couple of days have been great to see what other organizations are doing with skills. But when we talk about skills, this is the very first time KPMG has been able to actually record skills through using just simply implementing Degreed. So one of the selling points there is, of course, imagine if you implement Degreed in your country, you'll be able to get a snapshot of the skills across your workforce. What you can do with it is a different story. That's the next conversation and the next journey that we're having. But skills inventory, number one, very first time we'll actually have that inventory around skills ratings on their employees, and that gave L&D teams and business leaders the ability to actually say, okay, what are our highest ranking skills? Where are we actually lacking? What can we do about it? Have we got the right investment in learning and development? I've lost count of how many times I get asked, oh, we need a coaching program, and then you have a look at your inventory and say, hold on a minute, we've just spent sort of, $250,000 on a coaching program and didn't that work? And, it just gives them insights to go, okay, do we really need to invest in the same thing? Are our people skilled? Or do we need to change tack? Do we need to look at data analytics or cybersecurity as a gap? Again, that's a great benefit. Single gateway, that has literally been our mantra for global learning and development. To provide and reduce the amount of places our professionals go for learning is key. In Australia, when I actually implemented Degreed, I think I counted about 26 different links of places an individual can go into a learning space. How is that sort of beneficial for an individual? So looking at that single gateway, again, positioned as an LXP, really important to do some tough decisions too, and that means you've got to reduce some of those links out there and really position Degreed as this big button as your single place for learning. That takes change, communication, and I'm not going to stand up here and say, yes, we've done all that. Some countries have done it really well. And then the employee value proposition. We've been to, had graduate stores where one of the key components that they're positioning is Degreed as an employee value proposition. Again, for the new graduates, the future leaders, you can tailor your own learning. You can actually sort of, Spotify your own list of learning type of thing. You can actually follow what your leaders are learning. You can share and collaborate. Those things, again, for me, probably when I was going through L&D a long time ago, weren't sort of important, but they are now. And again, easy to sell depending on the particular business, what is important to them, and also culturally as well. So I think the lesson here that I found out of this is that I had to adjust. I had to stop being a learning and development professional and actually start thinking like a business leader, someone who makes decisions, who's got the checkbook in hand and has to invest in this. And for us, that actually meant, did we get progress? I believe we did. In 12 months, we were able to actually get a significant buy-in. So we have landed with 91 plus countries, but they still keep on coming, which is great. We've got a bit more work to do. We're not there at the 140 mark, but that's not including the 12 individual instances, which we're still continue to having that dialogue. So remember, it was a change in our strategy to go, we've got to stop putting these single instances and we're coming together as a centralized model. That's a tough task when you're in mid-flight and you're changing direction. So a last count, again, this is old figures, but total users at the end will approximately have 103,000 users. I don't like the completion stat there, so 235,000 should be views, but we'll leave it there for the time being. I actually do prefer to have actually viewed items, because the whole concept of this is to allow people the opportunity to learn anytime, anywhere. Not necessarily push learning, but pull learning. Allow them to pull. The Net Promoter Score provided by Degreed, that's not too bad. It's not in a negative, so I think that's great. But I think the key thing for me, there's two key elements for me that I'll just focus on here. One is within the first few months, and we've never been able to do this before. If you take a look at the traditional T&A skills analysis, it's usually done in an Excel spreadsheet, and then you work out what your plan is based on. We collected 95,000 skills within the first 3 months, and that's only wave one, and wave one wasn't even the 30 countries that launched. Like that figure itself just keeps on growing. So as each country launches, we're collecting more skills. And as I said, this is only the beginning of the journey for us, because the more we collect skills, we can do the amazing things that you can actually do with skills data. I'm looking forward to that journey, and also to the future roadmap for Degreed. But that was, again, a critical key feature for us. And I have to really put a spotlight on now One America's region. They were the only region that got, so obviously sort of, with the exception of the US, the only region to commit fully 100%. Amazing. And the reason why they were able to do that was the commitment and the buy-in by the leadership team from a business strategy perspective. So even today for our Wave 3, which has got a lot of the South American countries coming on board, if you've gone through the Degreed implementation, there's something called a showcase. So you need to think about what's your learning strategy, what's your skill strategy, and you have to present it back. We've kept that. I think it's great, because it puts each country and each learning and development team on their toes to think about how are they going to actually demonstrate how they're going to use Degreed. We've been able to get a key leader, two key leaders of that region, and we got their buy-in from the start, which was amazing. So they're not presenting to me, which is fantastic. It means that I don't have to do a 2 a.m. in the morning call. But they're presenting to the business leaders who really drive their business strategies in the One Americas region. Once you've got that commitment from the top, the buy-in from every other country, especially in that region, was literally easy. I did not have to do much. It was positioned the benefits that they were interested in, the collaboration, and we got that 100% commitment, which is, again, testimony to the leadership team in that region, and also the work that our team has done. So we do have a bit to go. When I look at the curation stats, we are still on this journey. We need to curate more. We've got an amazing tool, great LXP. We are only starting the journey of actually that change management. And that's not just for global learning and development, but it's also every single L&D team across the country, across the network. And in each country, there's L&D teams. So doing that paradigm shift, as I said, we've been on that journey for quite some time, but to me, and probably to my team, it still feels like it's the beginning of the journey. So I will, on that note, wrap that up and see if there's any questions. If anybody's got any questions, my colleagues are here, so if I get in trouble and you ask a really tricky question, they're the ones that have probably done all the hard work. So yeah, so a couple of minutes for questions. Just here. Oh, we've got a microphone.
Oh, just quickly, I was curious, you talked about how you plan to use skills. What are some examples of, in the future, what you'd hope, ideally, to be able to do to leverage that data from a business perspective?
So skills is the hot topic, right? Like every single meeting I go to, it's like, what are we doing with skills? So I think firstly, we are actually looking at a skills taxonomy and having the bare bones of skills map, first of all. And then potentially there's the opportunities in the marketplace. That's really the business driving. It's not coming from L&D. And then that's where then we will potentially plug in. So, and we're doing a lot actually with digital badges as well, so the validation of skills. So then you're looking at this complete system of, hey, I've got the skills, I rate my skills, okay, so I've got to work on a project. What do I need to do to get those skills? I come into the LXP, how are my skills validated? it's through a digital badging process, and then it goes back forward. So that is our plan. It's the utopian vision. We've got bits and pieces already starting to work, so I'm not going to say it's not working, but I think that's our ultimate vision, and I'm looking forward to what's happening with Degree out here with the skills layering. So yeah, I hope that answered the question. Cool, excellent.
Yeah. Hello, Sonia from Fortinet. I have seen that you have a huge amount of created pathways, around like 700. So I was just wondering, like, if you are challenged with the maintenance of those created pathways, because we are at Fortinet, and like, I just would like to hear any best practices, like, what is your approach, like, to really have like those created pathways, like, always up to date?
Yeah, so I don't know if we've got them graded as yet, but I can probably explain that the essence of the collaboration and the fact that, hey, you own the material, we actually give you collaboration access, you own the maintenance of it, which means it takes L&D out of the equation, or global L&D. We do use that, so really the responsibility, and it's a different model to the traditional L&D model where, global L&D would keep all the material and we have to maintain it. It makes us feel important. I think that's one of the things that you have to let go. The collaboration access has to go to the subject matter expert. Now, I can hear people going, well, Paulo, that means they've got no L&D experience. I get that. But that's where our L&D team, and I think sort of a lesson for us all, that we probably need to change with the times a little bit and go, okay, we used to create a lot, now let's help them curate. Let's give them best practice skills. So we do actually have a significant amount of, it's almost like a curation toolkit, that once you own a pathway, and we are saying, now you maintain this, not us, we don't have the capacity, we give you all the skills. We walk you through, have a checklist, best practice, white paper, we've got all the collateral to help you be successful. Now, we do have a bit of a coaching and mentoring piece where we do allow ourselves to, hey, show us your first sort of planned pathway, and we give feedback. You can ignore it, or you can just do it, just take it on board. But we really do relinquish that control now, but with the right education, training, and coaching. So, yeah. And so the grading then comes back to who owns the content. Do you want to grade? It's not our, not our responsibility. So yeah. But we've got about, I'm not going to sort of get we've got 100 plus skills, and then we've got technical frameworks to help with our professionals. So yeah, it's all about letting go. Keep control away. It's liberating. Any other questions? Nope. Last takers? Good. Good timing. A minute left. Well, hopefully it was enjoyable, and hopefully you got a couple of insights. I'll be around with my colleagues as well. Please feel free to ask us any questions. I never promise the fact that we're perfect, but in the last 12 months, I do believe we've made some significant change, and to get to the point where we're up to, it has been quite a shift in even the way I actually operate and communicate to business leaders. And that's the biggest lesson you can get out of that. So, yeah. Okay, thank you all. Appreciate it.